After years of being a psychic, he converted to Islam after finding a solution to avoid jinn terror from the Quran. After years of being an investigator of paranormal activity and having published many books about genies, Michael Hallowell was overwhelmed by the case of a family who felt they were being disturbed by genies. However, Michael Hallowell was at his wit's end looking for a solution, but he couldn't find a solution. Until a friend of his Muslim son introduced him to the jinn verse in the Quran. Michael Hallowell, an American convert, whose Muslim name is Michael Yahya, as born in 1957 in the town of South Shields and spent most of his time in the neighboring town of Jarrah. Michael Hallowell is a paranormal activity investigator who spent many years investigating paranormal activity. Michael cooperates with the police on principles related to these things. And finally, he comes across a case where they witness an invisible creature stalking a family in their home. And Michael couldn't solve this case until a Muslim friend of his son recommended him to read about the jinn creatures from the Quran. When he read about them, and he was shocked, how the Quran explained everything perfectly all. The questions about paranormal activity that he had been thinking about for a long time that made him convert to Islam. Michael Hallowell is a very prolific writer on the topic of genies. He wrote most of his books when he was not a Muslim. Michael is one of the most famous paranormal investigators. He has a family, a wife, and 3 sons, and is all British. Reporting from the Hidayah Instructions YouTube channel, November 15, 2022. Michael Hallowell explains his journey until he finally embraced Islam and became a convert. Michael's journey to Islam began years ago when he worked in a crime prevention police department. Michael regularly visits local communities and local Muslim communities to provide crime prevention advice. Michael always liked the Muslims he met because they were very positive and very happy people. He also used to cry every time he heard Islam criticized, even though he didn't know much about it. As an investigative investigator, Michael is investigating a case involving a family that is essentially plagued by something they can't see. If it is outside of Islam, then this is called paranormal activity. And this family had some kind of invisible entity in their house following them, and it was witnessed by police officers and other professional investigating people that they couldn't explain the things they saw and heard. And within decades, Michael was faced with this case, and he couldn't understand it, and he didn't understand. Michael has a son who suffers from depression, who likes to drink, gamble, and really has no purpose in his life. And then his son became Muslim and he stopped drinking, fighting, and gambling, and this really made his family wake up and see the extraordinary impact of his son on what Islam can do to change a person. The reason is being able to change from a negative way of life to a positive way of life. Then by chance, Michael was talking to a Muslim who is a friend of my son Ricky's. He mentioned several reasons for this particular case. He asked if Michael had a copy of the Quran, and after answering yes, then he asked Michael to read a certain chapter or surah, namely Surah Jinn. And when Michael started reading, he realized that this invisible entity was responsible for many of the paranormal activities seen in this world or unexplained events. And not only that, the Quran also explains perfectly what happened in the social case he investigated. For 1,500 years, people have been researching the supernatural, preternatural, and paranormal. And throughout this time, the answers Michael was looking for from the beginning were in the Quran. The next thing that happened was when Michael's 78-year-old father also became a Muslim and died at the age of 80. So his father had 2 years of being Muslim, and after that, people in his family started to take interest in Islam. The paranormal expert, Michael J. Hallowell, has accepted Islam. Mike Hallowell was born in South Shields, Tyne and Wear, in 1957. He was educated at Jarrow Central School before starting an apprenticeship in dental technology. He then changed his career path several times before spending a number of years in the police service. Finally, he launched his own media business and became a full-time freelance journalist. Drawing on over 4 decades of research, Mike specializes in writing about the supernatural and paranormal phenomena. Although he also pens books and features about local history and other subjects. Mike has written over 20 columns during his career, including Wraithscape, which is the longest-running paranormal newspaper column in the UK and from across the pond. A UFO-centered blog for the IRAP website, which has been running since 1998. Mike also penned Mike Hallowell's Backlight for UFO Matrix magazine and currently writes the Geordie Monsters blog for the website of the Centre for Fortean Zoology. Mike has lived all of his life in the northeast of England and is passionate about his Geordie roots. He has been married to his wife Jackie for over 30 years and has 3 children and 3 grandchildren. In 2007, Mike was diagnosed with the brain disorder narcolepsy. His symptoms have been described as moderate to severe, and he needs to take a number of different medications to enable him to function with anything akin to normality. Mike also suffers from a potentially fatal cardiac condition called ventricular standstill, which came very close to killing him in 2006. His near-fatal episode made the headlines, but he survived and is now kept alive by a pacemaker buried within the muscles of his chest. Despite his poor health, he continues to write and broadcast unabated, and once said he is determined to do so. Until the Grim Reaper sends me an email telling me that my services are needed elsewhere. Mike's books include the now infamous South Shields Poltergeist, co-authored with Darren W. Ritson, Investigator, The House That Jack Built, Ghost Taverns, also co-authored with Darren W. Ritson, Paranormal South Tyneside and Christmas Ghost Stories. Michael J. Hallowell penned over a dozen books before his conversion to Islam. Some were on subjects such as herbal medicine, others on local history. The majority were on various aspects of the supernatural. Although since embracing Islam, his views have changed regarding the origin of many paranormal phenomena. He is currently writing books on the same subject, but from an Islamic perspective.